Airwolf, it takes more than guts. And welcome to Nostalgia, a chronological exploration of every NES game released in North America. I'm Mike.
I'm Sean.
And I'm Joe.
Airwolf. It takes more than guts. I literally just said that a second ago. But I'm trying to figure out, maybe that has to do with, and maybe people don't even know this, but Airwolf, the game, is based on a TV show. Maybe that was like a tagline in the show. I've never heard of the Airwolf TV show, so I can't imagine it did that well. Any familiarity with the TV show, guys?
No, had no idea.
Yeah, I basically was playing the game, and then I decided to read up on the game a bit, and that was when I learned that it was a TV show. And I have no idea how I had never heard anything about it, because it seems to have a bit of a following. I hadn't even heard of the lead actor, who apparently was like a huge guy that kind of like ruined his life. So, yeah, there's a lot. It was a weird exposure of a huge blind spot playing this game.
It's got like a Knight Rider, but in the air feel, but yeah. Maybe not, because the helicopter doesn't talk. So,
but it's still
maybe not the best.
The star of the show.
That's true.
Much.
Sean, there's also another reason why I was kind of surprised we didn't hear about Airwolf before, and that's because it has like a really sweet synth score to the show, the opening theme and just the music in general throughout. I thought the synth music that I did hear was right on, and I would have liked to hear maybe more of that in the game itself.
It's literally, I think it's just the theme over and over, right?
Right. Which is fine, but it's not even like a version that, that sounds as badass as the actual theme song.
Yeah, and then most of the YouTube stuff, because, I was just trying to look at scenes of the show, and most of the YouTube stuff is just clips of the show without their audio, and just, again, the theme music playing over and over. So it's, I don't know, life imitating art and shit like that.
And people might think I'm joking here, but I'm being serious. I think for the time, the helicopter scenes in this show look great. Sometimes it does look like it's a toy helicopter.
I think it's actually that they're flying a helicopter.
I'm saying some particular stunts all of a sudden went to a weird view where I'm that could be the helicopter, or it could just be with props. But for the most part, I think they were using a real helicopter that probably is you can visit that somewhere now. But I think that's important, that that's if the show is about this helicopter that's unstoppable, the helicopter scenes better be good, and I thought they were.
Yeah, pretty good.
So the game itself takes place in a couple different modes, but let's just say for the most part you're in this first person view where you're in the cockpit of the Airwolf helicopter, and there's these enemy fighter planes that are coming at you, and they're shooting their missiles at you and what have you. So you got to take them down, but at the same time there's all these prisoners in different bases that you have to kind of navigate yourself to, and then pick them up and rescue those prisoners. Yeah,
each prisoner gets their own POW camp. It's a private POW spot where you get a lot of privacy. Nobody's even guarding you.
Well, it is protected by one repeating explosion off to the northeast. But that's it.
I felt like those explosions, though, forget the joke aside, Sean, that is an amazing joke, and it's funny because you don't consider it in the game. At least I didn't. I never thought that was strange.
Thank you for telling me that it's an amazing joke.
Right. No, but I'm saying, hearing you say it, all of a sudden I'm yeah, that is pretty flawed, because the map itself is really large, right? It takes a while to fight off the enemy aircrafts and, navigate to the prisoner of war camps, and then it's all right, we did it. We're here to pick up the one person who's left. Everybody else, I guess, was killed before we got there.
Ooh,
it might be an instance too where you see what was it? An early game, Commando, maybe. One of our early games where it's you pick up one of those run and gun shooters that we played early on. You pick up one guy, and that represents a whole camp's worth of prisoners. Like maybe you're just going and you're just you're picking up all the prisoners of war everywhere, and it's just represented.
No,
on
but
this
it's still just a helicopter. Like you can't you can't like say like, oh, this represents the hundreds that you actually saved. Like, no, you can't fit them all in a helicopter.
Sean,
Doesn't make any sense.
Sean, it's the Airwolf.
Well, yeah.
Okay, yeah. That's a good point, though, Sean. Yeah, you're right. It's just one helicopter.
Something I'd like to bring up, though, if I can, a little off topic from maybe the gameplay itself, but, who wants to play as a helicopter? Against fighter jets, no less. Like a helicopter that is, I get it's supposed to be the badass Airwolf and everything like that, but taking down, like, these, F-15 fighter jets, like, I don't know, like, it seems kind of crazy, and I don't think, like, a helicopter is the most exciting thing. I think we talked about this in the Tiger Heli episode, where it was like, if I'm doing a shmup, do I really want to be in a helicopter when I could be in so many other cool things? Like, think about the spaceship from Gradius, or, Top Gun. Top Gun was a cool, like, first-person perspective game where you actually felt like you were Maverick and stuff like that. Here, the helicopter is just, you don't get enough of it to really, like, feel like you're playing as a helicopter because you don't see it. But
to
it
me,
just feels strange.
It sounds like you just have an anti-helicopter, like, agenda if you don't like playing as a helicopter in any circumstance.
I just don't think that that's, like, what I go to for the most exciting thing, Like, I'm not like, wow, a helicopter. Like,
I hear you, because, like, a helicopter in this type of scenario lacks speed. Like, compared to, like,
that was the thing about Airwolf in the show. It was like a prototype of like a Mach 1 helicopter. So that was its thing.
Oh, so it has the speed.
It has the speed.
Well, my thought about why they would use a helicopter. I mean, obviously they use the helicopter because they're basing it on the show. But that aside, I think the helicopter works a little better in this first person format, at least back on the NES, because you can stop,
Yeah.
Whereas, like, it's weird to stop with a plane. You can stop and turn on a dime, and that makes it feel a little more, like, suited for this first person view back when first person views were kind of limited in their capabilities.
That is it is interesting that you bring that up. Just the fact that you can stop, because one of my first attempts at playing this game, I got really frustrated because I realized way too late that I had been stopped for the entire time I was playing the game. I was like, how do I navigate the map? Like, yeah. Anyway.
But remember, I said that the helicopter shots in the show were awesome. So why hide that behind a first-person view? Like, why remove the Airwolf, right? The big thing. Like, why hide that from the game? Couldn't they have done something to put more of an emphasis on this being a helicopter?
I mean, maybe it's just as simple as they can't make the helicopter shots in a video game, first person or third person, look that awesome. Like, it can look cool, but it's not like you can do awesome like visual stunts, because the player's controlling it anyway. You know what I mean? Like,
I guess like what they could have done is, instead of like the fake cockpit, like they could have put some sprites of the helicopter and then just had like a heads up display around it. I don't know if that would have made it more exciting, but that now you get to see the helicopter, because like there isn't enough, aside from you moving around on your map pretty quickly, there isn't really much to contribute to that sense of speed. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and I guess to your point, Mike, that, like, if you did have like the third person view, you could really give it more of a sense of speed like that too, where you can make it like a fast feeling shmup where you're dodging things and you're moving in between enemies and everything's kind of coming at you. Where here, yeah, you're right. They do have to sort of, I don't know, slow everything down and space everything out a little bit, and that makes it feel maybe not as like action packed as you would expect based on what it sounds like the show was like.
And another part of that, though, is that, like, no matter how fast you're actually going, you still turn terribly. Like,
yes.
We'll get into like why that makes this even like an even more like problematic part of the game. But yeah, it doesn't matter if you are just standing still or if you're going at 900 speed units, you're always just gonna sort of you're gonna have a turning radius of like I don't know, the Earth.
Just looking at the manual, it seems like, the developers of the game, or, whoever localized it, I don't know the story here, but they put the emphasis on, like, you being Hawk, the main character from the series, and, like, his ability to be the only person who can, control the Airwolf and complete this mission. So they're putting the emphasis there. So I get it. Maybe, like, a first-person view then is more like, now you're playing as Hawk. But I don't think that was the right read for the room. I think Airwolf, right, if you're going to call the game that, and the show is mostly about this helicopter, I still think the focus should have been there. But I'll get off this topic because, we do have a game to talk about. And Sean, you were talking about, just navigation in general during these, during this first-person perspective mode where you have to, you have to fight down these enemy aircrafts, but at the same time you have to check your mini-map to locate where the prisoners are, and then you have to rescue said prisoners. So do you just want to talk about like how navigation on this map works in general?
Yeah. So, the way that you turn, that's it's pretty self-explanatory. Like you just use the D-pad for that, and I guess for altitude, but I saw it more as just like cocking the helicopter up or down. But I guess that controls altitude. And then the interesting thing about this is they're doing something with the controller that I feel like we've talked about a lot and sort of complained about a lot when it comes to having lots of inputs on such a small and I guess like sparse controller. They started using the start and select button to change your speed. Like if you hold down start, you go faster. If you hold down select, you go slower. And that's how I ended up standing still for like a full level. So that's how you move, and then you it all kind of looks the same from the actual view where you're shooting planes and stuff, but you can tell where you're going from the map below, and that's how you get to each point of interest on that map. And then once you're like thereabouts hovering over whatever icon is on the map, then it switches to whichever rescue mode or refuel mode or whatever. And they're all just these little tiny mini games that are actually pretty easy. And then you can shoot guns or shoot missiles, and you move you turn way too slow. And that's how I would describe how you move around.
Yeah, no, I think you did. I think it's all encompassing there. That was very thorough. I appreciate that. But let me get your thoughts, while you're on this subject, because it seems like you have some thoughts, the combat portion of that, right? So if you're turning slow and you've got a lot of fighter jets to deal with and stuff like that, how did you feel? Like, did you feel like you were managing that stuff? Were you taking a lot of damage? Were you trying to avoid, the fighter jets? What was your strategy there?
I'd say that, there are certain situations where if you see a missile coming, because not only do you see the planes that you're fighting, but then you get this big circle that slowly starts getting bigger, and that's basically their missiles that they're shooting at you. If they shoot a missile at the corners of the screen, and the game has decided that they're moving in a way that is sort of against how you would turn to face them, you are guaranteed to get hit by that missile. It doesn't matter really how you manage it. You kind of have to just assume that anything at the corner might hit you and just start turning towards the guy at the corner. But there were the other things I did kind of to cheese that is like if I'm near like a refuel station or a prisoner, or hopefully I'm near the edge of the map, I would just race to that point, because then it sort of resets and anything that's in flight against you goes away. Because there are certain points where you cannot avoid getting hit, and it doesn't matter how well you, at least in my opinion, in my experience, it didn't seem to matter how well I was sort of navigating that space. I would just get hit.
Yeah, I mean, I think that to me happened, like, I feel like more often than not, I felt like whenever I died, it was just because there was something I couldn't. I mean, maybe I'm just bad at the game, but also I feel like there were so many times where I felt like you just can't catch up to the thing that, that just enters your field of view.
Yeah.
And as far as the way you turn, tell me if you guys felt the same way. Like, this could totally be in my imagination, but I felt like when you're turning towards an enemy, say there's an enemy towards the left of your screen, and I try to turn to the left, and even if that enemy doesn't appear to be also moving to the left, I feel like the game doesn't properly factor in, like, where I am in space against where they are in space. Like, I feel like it still keeps it sort of in the same spot on the screen a little too long or something.
Yeah.
Things that are fixed on the ground move across the screen. When I move to the left, I see it move across to the right of my screen. Obviously, things that are in the air could be moving to the left with me, but it just feels like even when it looks like it's turning to the right, it just stays in the same spot on the screen for too long.
Where you need it to be. Yeah.
Yeah. It was very frustrating because it just felt like you could almost, in some cases, you can just never reach them.
At the speeds that they're proposing the enemy crafts are going, right? Especially with them kind of following along with you turning, they should be flying past you more often than not too.
Yeah.
Like there should be some, like they're going so fast. I think there's also just like a, this is solved by a mechanic they put down of like, destroying the bases themselves to stop enemies from spawning. But, there is too much of the enemies, and I feel like you learn as a player, it's in your best interest not to, like, definitely to take down the missiles that come at you early enough, and to take down some fighter jets this way you're not, like, littered with a screen of them. However, I don't think it's in your best interest to try to keep taking them down, because when I was trying to do that, like, I just need to get through these waves or whatever, you kind of understand that the waves are unlimited, and it makes you almost, like, it diverts you from any of the prisoner, that you're supposed to rescue. And then, like, maybe if you're lucky, you get saved, like you just, like, randomly spawn into another prisoner camp that you didn't know about or something.
Exactly, yeah.
But, like, otherwise, it's like the one that you're supposed to get to on the minimap, it's like, good luck actually going over there and following that one, while also trying to take down everything that's in your way. And to me, that also makes the Airwolf seem like it's not the best guy for the job.
Yeah, because my strategy was to try to always keep in mind where my next target was. Like, if I was going to go get fuel or if I was going to go to a prisoner, and do my best to sort of like fight against the instinct of chasing these planes around, because if you do that, you'll end up just spinning in circles and you're nowhere near where you want to be anymore, because you just attempting to like aim at somebody is actually going to turn you maybe like 90 degrees or 180 degrees. So some you just have to like let go, and it's hard to do that when maybe they shot something at you and you also need to you need to save yourself. That just extends it. And I guess maybe that's part of the challenge of the game, is trying not to get so far off course, but also not taking damage. So you have to give yourself like some leeway there. But it is just a weird, like tying aiming in your field of view to where you are going. It leads to a lot of like juggling in your head, and it doesn't feel all that intuitive to me.
And if they really wanted you to take your time and use strategy to this, why include, according to the manual, I didn't play them all, why include 20 levels of this, over and over and over again? It's like, it's long enough taking down, a single map and rescuing all the prisoners. And I'm not, like, that's fair. Like that, that sounds good and everything like that. But then to do that like 20 more times, assuming that you want to like take it slow and everything like that, I don't know. I feel like eventually you're going to be encouraged to take some shortcuts and cheese the game a little bit if you can figure out how to cheese it. I certainly couldn't. But like, I feel like you're incentivized to speed up a little bit, not slow down.
Yeah. I definitely just went fast so that I could like hopefully outrun the missile. But by the time that I got to either the edge of the map to end the level or to whichever thing I was trying to pick up. And I'd say like, well, okay, yeah, I know 20 levels of doing the same thing over and over. It doesn't sound that appetizing. I get that as the levels progress, there are more prisoners to pick up, and that is sort of like to add to the challenge. And sometimes you'll actually need to go refuel instead of using it as like an out to escape a missile or something. But I don't think anything else meaningfully changes throughout those 20 levels. It's just like pick up more enemies. Aside from the idea that like the backgrounds are kind of changing to give some visual changes. But yeah, go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say that was kind of my biggest takeaway too, is that like it's just, I mean, I know so many games are like repetitive gameplay loop, especially in this era, but it's just too repetitive. I mean, even like just adding more enemies to pick up feels to me like when the game tries to make itself harder by just adding more enemies, just throwing them all in the same spot without like thinking about what makes it difficult or without thinking about enemy placement or something like that. Because I mean, the picking up the enemies is almost like that's designed in a way, we haven't talked about it yet, but it's designed in a way where it could be a cool mini game of its own. You have to sort of finesse the landing of your helicopter and dodge any like towers and obstacles and explosions in your way. The problem is there's like one tower and one explosion that's always in the same spot in every single one. It never changes. So like you get there, you do this thing that they went to the trouble of making it feel like you have to actually land the helicopter and you have to dodge things, and then they just never seemed to went through the trouble of designing levels around that. They just kind of did like a reskin of the same exact thing over and over and over again.
Right, it's the kind of thing you expect from an arcade game. And what I mean by that is like, when the levels or when the gameplay loop repeats itself very quickly, the idea there is like, maybe things happen faster or there's more of them, or, you're supposed to do that. But usually those games, arcade games are usually like one of two different things. They're either like very fast levels, and the idea is like, it's almost like a rhythm thing where you keep getting better and the levels keep getting harder. Or, the gameplay itself is kind of simple and straightforward. I don't think Airwolf's offering either of those here. I don't think this feels like an arcade game. This actually, crazy as it sounds, like feels like an NES game. It feels like a home console game. I wouldn't want to play this in the arcade. I'd want to sit down and spend some time with it at home.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it feels like there's missions, and it's like a, you've got goals, and it's like a little bit of a journey to like get to the end of it. It's just, there's just not enough like variety in the gameplay, and I'm not asking for them to have like done some crazy thing that changes the whole game, but like with those picking up the, with those profile view levels where you're picking up, if you want to even call them levels, where you're picking up the hostages. Do you guys remember that there was like a browser game where you're a helicopter and it's just like one button is to go up and then let go of the button and you go down, and you have to
eventually
dodge between
became
things?
Flappy Bird?
Sort of.
Yeah,
but
I know what you mean.
You hold the button just to go up and then let go to. Like that's what this pretty much is. Like that's like how this controls. There's just no obstacle. Like put some explosions, put some things for me to dodge, put some, some things in there for me like each time, make it a little different.
If they reframed it not so much as okay, here's the spot that you land, just land there, and don't hit the pole. If they reframed it as sort of like, oh, you have to, now you're close to the ground, and now you have to dodge like some enemy fire, and like I know in that browser game, like just don't hit the walls, like the scrolling ceiling and shit. Like all you have to do is recontextualize that as like enemy fire, and
exactly,
and then it's a much more engaging thing. Except for like all 20 levels, it's the same landing sequence.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that. It's like a whole part of the game that they programmed is pretty much wasted because of that.
Yeah, but if I had to guess, I think it's just like they put way too much development time and resources into this, probably very intensive first-person, fighter jet combat simulator, which like to me isn't the essence of, the show or what the game should necessarily be about, because I keep trying to say it's a helicopter, but I don't feel like it. There's something interesting here about like, Joe, you're bringing up a good point here about like the rescuing the prisoners is always being the same, but like maybe that should have just even been more of the game. It's such a short experience. Who cares about like, that they repeated it over and over again when the actual like thing that it is happens so quickly that it's almost like, you spend 95% of the game in this first person view and then it's like, oh yeah, I didn't even realize I was here, but now I'm in this side scrolling view and I've just got to make sure I do the thing I always do. Okay, now back to the game. Like it almost doesn't feel like
it's
this
too routine.
Right. It's like a weird pause. And like I think a big part of my point is that like it seems like they did the hard work of making another part of this game. It all works. It feels good to control the helicopter and that thing. Why didn't they just put some things in there to make it interesting?
Yeah.
And then you can go refuel. And you know how you refuel? By doing exactly the same thing you do to pick up a hostage. It's literally exactly the same thing, except there's a fuel drum there instead of a hostage.
Some goofball shit.
They should, goofball shit. I like that. What they should have done is like when you get to the rescue the prisoners part of the level, it goes like side-scrolling helicopter shmup style, and now you take on like other types of enemy aircrafts or ground things too, so you have like your missiles and your bombs now, and you got to make your way through like this part of the stage in order to get to the prisoners. It shouldn't just be like the prisoners just hanging out in essentially an open field while there's a swarm, like what you would consider a swarm of bees worth of enemy aircrafts hanging around in the space. But the prisoners are like, hey, we're free. Just come down and pick us up.
Yeah, that is weird, actually, that there's no enemies. There's just that one explosion.
Which I have to assume that explosion, because you pointed this out much earlier in the episode, I have to assume that what they meant by that is like those explosions are like the missiles that the enemy aircrafts were shooting at you.
Yeah, it looks like they're trying to put like, how anti-aircraft weapons just sort of explode in the air, and they use a lot of images of World War II have these big explosions in the air. I feel like they're doing that, but they needed to do it in more than one spot to like sell it. Like I would buy it if it was more like random and maybe looked like fireworks were going off in different spots on the screen, but yeah, otherwise it just looks kind of goofy and half-baked. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's literally in a spot of the screen that you never have to go to.
Yeah.
Like, just don't go over there, and you win. Like, you won't die.
Well, you have to go down slowly, Joe.
Yeah, you have to go down slowly, but the explosion is always to the right of where you need to go down. I'm watching video of it right now.
You cannot die. I mean, you can still die. But,
you're right. Yeah, you do have to land slowly, but the explosion will never get you unless you deliberately fly over to the explosion.
Okay, so I think we've covered what we can about the rescuing the prisoners, but
I want to talk about this all day.
I would like to talk about destroying the bases. Did any thoughts there about how that maybe also was changing the game a little bit from the first person perspective? It's still the same thing.
There's no change in perspective now. It's just it populates an aircraft tower, and you just have to shoot it a few times, and it'll shoot at you, but its bullets always end up like overlapping the tower, so it's pretty easy to at least dodge those and like destroy those. But again, this is an example of a part of the game that never changes. On all 20 levels, you just shoot the tower and it explodes. If they had different kinds of towers that, like, maybe it's got a weak spot that you have to hit, and there are other weapons that are firing at you, or something else, just something else, it would be a bit more engaging. But no, it's the same tower on every level.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice that it gives you like a goal that's not just shooting down all the other planes. Like, it gives you a little goal, but it does get old. I just think that for a game like this, it's just not enough of a gameplay loop variety for me.
Joe, that's not mandatory though. That's like a bonus thing of like, hey, if you want, you could take down the
right, and then you get your little
yeah.
report card at the end, and that tells you like what you did.
Yeah, I mean, I know, but I appreciate that part at least a little bit. That like it's not the same. Like that's actually just something that they included to help you in a way.
Not that I can tell, but I mean, I know that is the case. That if you blow it up, then there will be less fighters that are trying to take you down. But I could not tell the difference.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll say that it adds, at least in the context of what's going on, it adds that little extra like immersion. Like, oh, I can destroy these, and supposedly there'll be less enemies. But yeah, I don't know. I think almost going back to what you said before, Mike, that for them to have made this sort, I mean, we've seen this done before, but made this sort of 3D first-person view, maybe just meant that like the rest of it had to be incredibly simple.
That's the only thing I can think of, but whether that was the right decision or not, I don't know. I think on our Top Gun episode, Sean made a good case for why he thought that was an essential game, and we all seemed to enjoy it. That also wasn't always in the first person. It had the landing on the carriers and everything like that, and I think they just found a way in Top Gun to manage you controlling a aircraft and dealing with enemies and what that entails a lot. They made that not simpler, but they made it more like time and resource effective than what Airwolf is trying to do here, where it seems like, they've filled, there's enemies everywhere, and there's towers you can take down, and there's prisoners you got to rescue, but at the end of the day, it just has a stale feeling to it after you've played for what do you want to say, 15 minutes? If you played for 15 minutes, after that, I feel like it got kind of stale.
Yeah, I agree.
I'll agree. Yeah,
and you know what? Once you just mentioned Top Gun, I just hopped on over to a video of Top Gun to remind myself, and it looks so much more. The motion looks so much more, like fluid and fast, and it feels like you're moving. I mean, they have these clouds that whiz past you, and it just. I mean, obviously, I'm not playing it right now, but just from watching this guy on YouTube playing it, it looks like the turning is so much more fluid. I think that they just, got the mechanics down better, too, in Top Gun.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, if you're watching that video, though, and I'm sure, fans of Top Gun might want to check out Airwolf, too, but if you're watching that video, Joe, you'll also see that, like, I don't know, it's just like enemies are handled better. Like, there's land and sea, and they're not like always at you, they just kind of like, they appear, and it becomes more like Sean was saying earlier, like that's when it becomes like a strategic battle, like a one-on-one dogfight, as opposed to here where it's like 7-on-1, and I don't really feel like I'm any more powerful than any individual one of those enemy aircraft.
Yeah. And I'm, they're moving through space. Obviously they're doing that in this game too, but it doesn't feel like it because everything is like so slow relative to you. Whereas in Top Gun, things are moving away from you and moving towards you, and, it feels like where you're turning affects where everything else is relative to you.
Another nitpicky thing that I have, the debriefing of the missions, a nice touch for sure that we get to hear from another character from Airwolf. I forget the general's name. I'm going to look it up here. Looks like is that really his name? Archangel?
Is that Ernest Borgnine?
It's Michael Coltsmith Briggs III.
Okay.
McBriggs III. I'm making all this up. I wish we knew the show better. We don't. But it is in the manual that Briggs 3 contacted
Briggs
Hawk.
3.
So Briggs 3. I don't know. Does he want to be called the third? Like, seems like he does because he puts it in both his from and he puts it in his signature. Like I'm the second, but I don't put the Roman numeral 2 on my signatures for my checks. I think that's like, this guy is really, he's really appreciating the third.
I mean, I feel like the third is probably the best of the, like you can't be a junior. Junior is emasculating, you know?
Yeah. No, that's why I'm the second and not junior. But I think 16. It's go 16 or bust, man. Like
16.
The 16.
Yeah,
I feel like once you get
XVI, like
that's too many. That's too much investment and time.
No,
spent
I think that once the third is good, the fourth, fifth, sixth, it starts to get a little stale. But like once you get to like ridiculously high numbers, like you got to bring it back at that point. You're like, we got the 16. I'm the 16th.
I should look up and see if I'm truly the second or if I can find older ancestors. Anyway, back to the point I was making. I think he's the one who shows up on these debriefing missions, and it's cool, and the pixel art is fine for what it's worth. Like I would have liked to have seen some mouth movement or something, but like, why is the headshot so extreme close up? Like he's so close to the screen. I don't know. If
because
that was
you're really
like,
there, Mike.
I don't know. Like, I guess like
He's a close talker.
Yeah, I guess it depends on where you put your TV, though. Then should I put my TV like at exactly like 5'9"? This way, I feel like he's in the room.
This guy just gets way up in your face, and he's like, "That was really impressive. There aren't many pilots that would do that." And then he just keeps making aggressive eye contact with you at 3 inches away.
And was anyone else startled by the Airwolf logo?
Yeah,
that wolf-looking thing with the crazy colors. Like, I don't know. I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah,
I wasn't expecting it.
It's funny because that logo is like the only thing that's familiar to me. Like, I definitely have seen that logo before. Like,
yeah, it's on the guy's jacket in the show.
Yeah, but Joe doesn't.
But I didn't see any of the show.
Well, now you have.
Oh wait, I was in the show.
Yeah, you were in the show.
Yeah, you're that famous guy that Sean couldn't remember.
Yeah, who did something with his life or something. You said.
Yeah, he ruined his life by joining a podcast.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the same thing.
I mean, if we want to talk about like off-topic stuff, like Jan Michael Vincent, who was the star of that show, like I was trying to find video of the show, and instead I saw this like compilation of like basically the sad like downward spiral of this guy's life due to like alcohol abuse and a bunch of car accidents. Like it was a really weird like side quest of doing research for this episode of like, oh no, now I'm sad.
Now he's like immortalized for that Rick and Morty sketch.
Yeah.
Oh, is that in Rick and Morty?
Yeah, this is the first that I've heard of like him in context outside of Rick and Morty.
Oh wow. I guess
yeah, it's like this January, Michael your Vincents or something.
Yeah, you
like
better
that.
Michael down your Vincents.
What the hell?
He's like, in a world where there's only 12 Jan Michael Vincents. This is one of those interdimensional cable things.
Oh, I see.
He also goes by Michael Vincent and Mike Vincent, according to Wikipedia.
I just saw that.
In terms of sequels and spin-offs, we have Airwolf, the arcade game, which actually came out before this. For some reason, they had an arcade game up and running that seemed very straightforward and something that you would want to put on the NES. But instead, Acclaim was like, no, I want my own version of Airwolf. I don't want the arcade game. I need one specifically developed for the NES. So that's what we got, the NES game, and love it or hate it, that's what it is. But Airwolf, the arcade game, is actually just like a straightforward helicopter shmup. A lot like Tiger Heli. So I guess it's probably for the best that this game didn't come to the NES, since like it's so similar to Tiger Heli that it's like you might as well just buy one or the other. And I'm sure people could get enough from one of them. They don't need to be like, I'm really in search of more helicopter shmups. Like, can I get any more of those? After that, we have Airwolf. I usually you guys react.
I know. I was like, well, I should say something because Sean's not saying anything. I should say something. One of us should, and then you just kept going. So.
But that shows how little people care about helicopter shmups.
Yeah.
Like, nobody wants to play as a helicopter.
Mike is right about this. Helicopters suck. Nobody ever liked helicopters, and he never wants to play as a helicopter again.
Yeah, agreed. So, Airwolf 2, the Roman numeral 2, just like...
I think it's Airwolf the second.
Yeah, Airwolf the second. It came out, believe it or not, but only for the Amstrad CPC, which I imagine is some kind of personal computer only in Europe or something like that. I never heard of it. You guys ever hear this thing?
No.
Right.
No.
Well, I'm actually shocked that they would call this the sequel, like Airwolf 2. And whether it's the sequel to most likely the arcade game or the NES game, I don't think it matters. Because this game is a downgrade in every possible expectation of what a sequel could be. Graphics, shit. Music, shit. Gameplay, shit. Even the concept of what it would be to be a helicopter shmup, garbage. Like, this game looks like absolute trash, but maybe that's just because of the limitations of the CPC. And you would think that it stops there. Oh, Joe, were you going to say something?
What did you say this as far? I'm just looking to see what you're talking about, and I'm seeing one for the ZX Spectrum. Wonder if that's the same thing. It also looks pretty bad.
But that's Airwolf 2?
Yeah, Airwolf Roman numeral 2.
There's a lot of Airwolves, and a lot of Airwolf 2s. I think it was just they were released on different platforms at the same time.
Oh, so so it wasn't just for the CPC.
But I mean, it's all that stuff. Like, the Commodore 64 and the ZX. Like, I think they're all in that same bracket of performance and stuff. So it all probably
now you
like
guys.
Shit.
You made me look that up, and I just found out that Airwolf the Second is actually the 35th episode of the TV show Airwolf, and the second episode of season 3. They literally called it Airwolf 2.
Huh.
But with the Roman numerals.
Oh, maybe it was like another physical Airwolf.
Yeah.
The firm has secretly developed a new advanced helicopter.
This one could go Mach 2.
Yeah. How much you want to bet that the helicopter goes bad or something? Right?
Yeah.
Probably.
Oh wow! Having no further need for Airwolf, Zeus fires Archangel, accusing him of disloyalty to the firm F.I.R.M. So the firm is actually.
I gotta watch this show.
The show sounds awesome.
I know. From the clips I saw, it looks just campy enough with cool enough action scenes that I want to watch it now.
Yeah. So they wind up stealing the Red Wolf, which is the new, the new advanced Airwolf. They wind up stealing it and selling it to a group of South American revolutionaries.
Oh? South
American revolutionaries. Yeah, they didn't travel back in time and give it to us in the 1700s. They gave it to the South American revolutionaries. And, that's interesting. And this is a better tangent than that awful Airwolf 2 port game that calls itself a sequel, but really isn't. I can't think of too many other games that are like that, sequels. There are sequels that are worse, but sequels that nobody would accept. I can't think of something like that. They're always some kind of we added this, or the graphics look better, or after 20-year wait, it's this is just we made this if you want it.
Well, okay, so it looks like Airwolf 2, the second, is a sequel to the Airwolves that came out on those personal computers. Because, Acclaim made Airwolf for NES, but all of these oldie Airwolves are made by Elite. So that was their own secondary Airwolf licensed game series. So it is. I don't think it has any actual attachment to the Acclaim game.
Well, not to the Acclaim game, but maybe the arcade game? Maybe those are ports of the arcade game?
Even those, not so much.
Oh, interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey.
A lot of people wanted a piece of Airwolf.
They wanted a piece of Airwolf, that action, that money, that Jan Michael Vincent. They wanted it all.
And there's only 8 Jan Michael Vincents, so
yeah. And I'll tell you another thing. They wanted Airwolf so much that it actually made it all the way over to the Mega Drive in Japan, what we know as the Genesis, for Super Airwolf. Now, it's only called Super Airwolf in Japan, which I'm like, wow, did that have a following on TV in Japan? Because in America, by the time it came out, the Airwolf was dead. So Crossfire is what it was called here on the Genesis. And it's the same exact game, but they actually removed the constantly playing Airwolf theme song and any names associated with Airwolf, I guess because they didn't have the license. But it's like, why would you stick with that in Japan? I guess it must have had a pretty big following. But either way, it's a pretty basic shmup for 16-bit consoles. And then all of a sudden, it just occasionally you jump out of the helicopter and it becomes an Ikari Warriors type game where you're on the ground and you're shooting up people and it's still top down and everything. It's got a cool synth soundtrack though, faithful to the show, but only if you're playing Super Airwolf, not Crossfire.
Huh.
Well, I think we've been as faithful as we can be to Airwolf in the time that we've reviewed it. We gave it an honest assessment. We definitely the TV show. I don't think we ever talked about the media as much as the game as we have today.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of enamored by it right now.
So the last thing we have to do is give it an honest assessment of whether it winds up on the Essential Games list. Joe? Airwolf.
I mean, I don't think that anyone's going to be surprised by my vote based on what we've talked about today. I mean, I think we sort of said it all. I mean, it needed, in my opinion, a little more variety. It needed to control better. It needed to be at least as good as, as Top Gun or other games that we've played in this kind of style in order for me to look at it as an essential game, even just for those portions of the game. I think it could have used a little more development personally, so I'm going to say no.
Sean?
Yeah, on paper, I like the idea of this game. It has some elements of you do the landing, you do the rescuing, you do the flying, you do the shooting, all in different kind of ways. So I liked that. I liked that when I was reading the manual. But at the end of the day, a vehicular combat game, the vehicle that you're driving around or flying around has to feel good to do that with. It has to feel good. In this game, it does not feel good to fly this helicopter. And that is 99% of the experience. Though you do get to have, those close talker post-game wrap-ups. With that, this is not essential.
All right. The only thing I'll add from what I've been saying in the episode is, just imagine that you got your hands on the newest Godzilla game, right? And it's going to be awesome because it's Godzilla and how could it not be? But Godzilla's really small in this one. He's
a helicopter in this one.
No, he's really small and he just the cities are in the background. They're not really something you attack or something like that. They kind of throw these ants that are Godzilla's size as the enemies that you have to blow fire at or scratch at or whatever his attacks would be. And it's all right, it's not following the exact plot of any particular movie of Godzilla I know, and I don't really know those ants or whatever, but okay, I'm playing as Godzilla, so and I love Godzilla, so this must be a great game, right? Because I'm playing as Godzilla. That's how I imagine Airwolf fans felt like. They didn't really get to be in the badass helicopter that can do anything and everything. This helicopter can shoot bullets and fire missiles, and even the missiles aren't unlimited. So I think that's what it comes down to, is ultimately, even fans of the show shouldn't necessarily be in love with this game because, and I hate helicopters, but there's a way to make this game, more about the helicopter itself and more based around that. And I feel like what they went with instead was not thinking about, the Airwolf itself strengths. and instead just thinking like, well, it's going to be a first-person perspective game where you take down enemy aircrafts, and it's like, cool, let's just attach a license to it. And that's what I think we got. So I can't put that on the Essential Games list on any day of the week.
Even Thursdays?
Definitely not on Thursdays, because we would never post an episode on Thursdays. It's always Fridays at 8 a.m. for some reason. 8 a.m. is where it's at. Airwolf, not on the Essential Games list, but it will have a chance again in our Best of 1989. I don't know why I felt like saying that. I thought that would be funny. Next week we have another game. What are you going to say, Sean?
No, I mean, we're not going to have that episode for like a year and a half, right?
Yeah, right. So you'll have a lot of time to consider it. You'll have a lot more time to play Airwolf. What I was going to say is next week we have another game, because that's how the format of the show works. Every week, different game. The next game, chronologically, according to North American releases. And we're currently in June of 1989, for those following along. So June of 1989 consisted of The Adventures of Bayou Billy, Airwolf, and now next week's game, California Games, which, implies to be more than one game. I'm joking. We all know what this is. We've played all these other games, winter games, summer games. So now we finally get California Games, the natural progression in seasons. Winter, summer, California.
Love it.
Anyway, if you want to hear more about the podcast, you can always find us on Twitter at NestalgiaCast, Nestalgia cast. I could keep spelling, but you're not here to listen to me spell. You're here to listen to me plug things like the Twitter or like my own Twitter at Esposito Film. And I am Michael Esposito. You can find us every Friday or any day of the week if you go to that Twitter page I was talking about. Everybody have a great week, especially Joe.
Me, Joe, or one of our listeners, Joe? Or both?
Because you asked, one of our listeners.
Okay, that's fine. I would rather give it to one of the listeners. You know, they're loyal.
Amazing. Sean, have an okay week.
This Sean or one of our listeners, Sean?